I remember whenever depersonalization realization first showed up, I had no idea what it was. And I was having a panic attack after a bad marijuana experience. If you followed my channel for a little while, you know my story. And I was pacing back and forth and I was crying out to my friends, like, call an ambulance, I'm going to die. And when they wouldn't call an ambulance, I hit that point of overwhelm in my nervous system. And I thought that I was going to die. I literally felt trapped and overwhelmed. And the way that our nervous system works is we first try to fight or flee. But if we can't fight or flee and we hit that point of overwhelm in our nervous system, doesn't even necessarily mean that we feel overwhelmed. If our nervous system becomes overwhelmed, there's only one last ditch effort to survive, and that's the freeze response, also called a trauma response. And in the freeze response, sometimes our brain will help us dissociate, which means to separate from the pain of being eaten by a lion, which is what your brain thinks is happening, by making you feel detached from your body, which is depersonalization, or making you feel detached from the material world, which is derealization. So I was already having a panic attack. My heart was racing, sweating, shaking, all kinds of symptoms were happening. But then you throw in DPDR. And I felt like I was watching myself on a video camera. And I remember time started to feel super slow as well, which also happens in a trauma state. My friends started to look like cartoon characters. Everything felt like a movie. I remember looking at the street light and the cars, and everything just felt fake. Everything felt very cold and distant and very bizarre. And that made me freak out even more. And long story short, I went to sleep. My friends gave me a big glass of water and they put a fan on me. And I kept waking up and I would check my hands and I'd feel detached and I'd look around, everything would feel fake. And I go, oh, and I'd try to go back to sleep. And then I wake up at like 2 a.m. and like 4 a.m. And every time that I checked, the symptoms were still there. But I remember finally waking up, and maybe it was like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning, and the symptoms were gone. And I remember looking at my friends and I was like, I freaked out, didn't I? And I never forget my friend Josh, man, which he was my best friend, man. He was a jock, you could say, or he was like into football and sports, and I was just a reject kid that nobody liked. I didn't have a lot of friends. And in junior high, man, he took me in and he was my friend, and we played World of Warcraft together, and I hung out at his house all the time. And, he literally was my best friend, and we never, ever talked much after that. I check in with him every now and then. And he's a great guy, don't get me wrong, but, he was smoking a lot of weed at the time, and he just kind of knew like, hey, Jordan's clearly not going to be able to handle this, and I get it. But I also lost a friend. I lost a best friend over that. And so anyway, I thought that it was over. And I went to my mom's house where I was living at the time. This is right after high school graduation. And I remember watching TV, and all of a sudden I started to feel depersonalized and I felt derealized. And I sprang up off the couch, my heart started racing, and there I was in my mom's kitchen, pacing back and forth. The same exact scenario, only there was no weed. I wasn't high. And I remember this cycle going on for a long time. I was having 20 panic attacks a day, constant DPDR, and felt like I was going crazy eventually. I remember sitting at my mom's table and thinking like, oh, I'm the guy in my family that went crazy. I've lost my mind. I'm never going to be able to get married or, have a family, which, spoiler alert, none of these things ever came true. And I was absolutely terrified. But I'll never forget whenever I bought this book it was actually specific for panic attacks, and it was kind of more of an acceptance approach. But it explained what depersonalization and realization were. And now that I'm looking back at it, it didn't even give an accurate explanation of why the symptoms were happening. But I remember there was finally a name to what I was experiencing. And just knowing that I wasn't going crazy gave me so much relief, okay? And I don't think that people understand just how important education is. Now, that's not enough to recover. I still had tons of tension, adrenaline, emotion, fatigue in my body that I needed to deal with. I needed to prioritize sleep and nutrition. I needed boundaries in life. There was so many other things that had to happen. But just figuring out that these are safe symptoms that our brain deploys during points of stress, particularly overwhelming stress or traumatic stress, come to find out later, it really, really helped me. Okay. So make sure to see a doctor, of course. But if you've been checked out by a doctor and they say things like, oh, it's just anxiety or it's just stress, I just want to give you some encouragement, some reassurance that these symptoms are uncomfortable and terrifying, but they are not dangerous. They can't hurt you in any way. And I've been able to beat them, and I've spent the last 6 years helping people all over the world beat them as well. And there is hope for you, okay? So that is it. I want you to comment below. What did you think when the symptoms first showed up? What did you think that they represented? I want you to share that so people can see just how normal it is to freak out and to think that you're going crazy or losing your mind or becoming psychotic or this thing or that thing. Also, if you'd like to work with me directly to overcome these symptoms, there's a link below. There's also a free masterclass that will give you the 5 shifts that you need to make to begin that journey to overcome the symptoms. So click like this helped you, subscribe, and I will talk to you very soon.